Over the weekend, we got a brand new update on Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, detailing some very interesting topics, such as the return of the Arbiters, as well as what's to come with Zack. So please, hit that subscribe button like it's a free ticket to the Gold Saucer, because we got some very interesting topics to dive into today. So starting out with an interview in geekculture.co, Hamaguchi had this to say, quote, "In the previous game, we brought in the Whispers, so for the player, they can expect to see if there are any further developments for the Whispers. Not only will they appear, Zack is showing up as well. So it's like, what will happen to Zack? This is the exciting point." It really doesn't get too much more clear than this. He explicitly says, not only will they appear, Zack is showing up as well. Practically spells it out for you. Now, previously, there was some debate on whether the Whispers would appear in Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. A lot of the discourse was that they're done now. We defeated them at the end of Remake, and they're not going to appear anymore throughout the trilogy. I never quite believe that. The first reason that I never really believed that the Arbiters were gone is that we never really got the big reveal on them. We still don't know how or why necessarily they were created. We have some loose details from the game's Bestiaria and Ultimania, but we don't really have anything firm on them. There hasn't been a big exposition dump on them yet that you would expect from this game. And so we're still wondering, like, what's really going on with the Arbiters. The second thing is that if you were really closely paying attention to the game, the Arbiters are never actually defeated. We only weaken them, and when we do, Sephiroth absorbs them. It's very clear here that we played right into Sephiroth's hand, doing exactly what he wanted the player to do. And what is the meaning of Sephiroth absorbing the Arbiters? I have no idea. Nobody really does yet, but I would assume that it's symbolism of him taking control of destiny, and the implications of that are going to be explored in Rebirth and whatever the third title is called. I'm personally pushing for reincarnation, but that's just my hope. With the Arbiters set to return, I don't think they're probably going to be as ham-fisted as they were in the first game. They're not going to be blocking you off from certain areas. After all, Rebirth is very much predicated on the idea of player freedom, being able to go places that you want to go when you want to go there, or at least when the story allows for you to go there. Now, in terms of them being story intrusive, that comes down to the role that they're going to play in this next one. What's going to happen now that Sephiroth has control of them? That's kind of the hook into the story. The consequence of the Arbiters seems to be that they've created another timeline of sorts. A timeline where Zack Fair did not die, and in fact, seems to be still alive. This has been dubbed by fans as the Terrier timeline. And the Terrier timeline has a number of mysteries, including a mystery where the party is seemingly dead, and perhaps there's a second Cloud that is native to the Terrier timeline. And then we have the Beagle Cloud in the other timeline. It's presumed that these are going to intersect in some way. So this is going to be huge to see where things go with Zack from this point onward. That's kind of what people are wondering. Is he going to intersect with this other timeline? To me, I don't see any way in which you would have two timelines like this and them not intersect. I really can't think of any story where there are two multiverses that don't intertwine in some way. Or any type of story where there's two different threads happening and those threads don't intersect in any major way. Plus, it would seem weird to keep Zack alive in one timeline and then the party never know about it, but somehow his actions have an impact on the other one, all for the sake of trying to keep the loss effective in that timeline. It just seems muddied. It doesn't really have a certain level of effectiveness. In order for the player to process loss, it can't just be the character's processing loss and then you see the character over here in another timeline and they're okay and they're doing well and nothing is really wrong with them, right? If anything, it kind of creates this weird dissonance, right? It's almost like, dude, if only you knew this other thing was happening in this other timeline. And then we can get into multiverse theory from there, right? That not everyone from another timeline is the exact same person. They're technically a slightly different person with an entirely different soul, right? Maybe that could be explored, and maybe that's the way in which they're going to thematically explore loss. That being said, it is really difficult to do that, and it's really difficult to do that in the confines of Final Fantasy VII's narrative that really wasn't made for something like that. So it'll be really interesting to see how they adapt that for Final Fantasy VII Rebirth going forward. And Hamaguchi also reiterated this in another article from onemore.game.ph, where he said, in the same way, Hamaguchi likened Zack to them in the sense of being an important piece of Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. While Hamaguchi cannot divulge as much at the moment, he says Zack will play an important role as a major character, and that players should very much look forward to what will the world be, how will the world move, and what will the players encounter as they play the game. The article then says, due to Zack's involvement in this game, fans cannot help but concoct many theories about how the events in the game will all play out. When asked if they've seen any of the theories from various social media threads, Hamaguchi says they are not in a position to say whether any of this is correct or not, but they always check the pulse of the players regarding feedback for the game. Fan feedback is very important to the team, and they would like to let fans know that these things do not fall upon deaf ears. They appreciate it because it shows a certain level of excitement about wanting to play and delve deeper into the world of Final Fantasy. And then we have this quote, which definitely sparked a little bit of discussion. Here is what the article says. This comes from GadgetMatch.com. Hamaguchi said, "There's for sure many players who have never played any Final Fantasy game before, but they might have heard the names Cloud and Sephiroth somewhere. If that piqued their interest, it wouldn't make sense to direct them to the original game, given the state of gaming today. It's this general thought that led to pursue the Final Fantasy VII Remake project. It's to bring these really popular characters to a gaming experience that makes sense for today's standards. We understand that Final Fantasy VII is a difficult title to get into today, but the game, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, is developed very meticulously so it won't feel unnatural when you start playing. All the tutorials will be there. We've created everything so that new players can enjoy the game," he added. I found this one to be a very interesting statement. When you play Final Fantasy VII Remake, it feels like it's begging you to play the original, making all of these nods and teases that you'll only understand if you've consumed the original game and compilation. Now, normally this wouldn't be so bad. After all, these teases are just part of the fan service, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. But it really feels like to understand some of this stuff, you do need to do a little bit of homework in the Final Fantasy VII. I imagine that if you are brand new to FF7, seeing that ending scene with Zack at the end and him surviving his last stand, you're just thinking, who is this black-haired guy and what is the significance of this scene? Now, if you have played the OG or you played Crisis Core, touched any of the compilation material, seeing that scene is incredibly shocking and very effective. But for those who haven't, it's just completely blank. It's completely lost on them. Who Sephiroth is, they only vaguely understand by the end of this. And so it's definitely led them to do a lot of Google searching and etc. I don't think that's the worst thing in the world. And certainly I think that newcomers can play Final Fantasy VII Remake and have a good time. However, if you do look at the discourse on FF7R and anyone who's curious about playing it or anyone who says, oh, maybe I'll start with Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, the entire community will direct them to play either the OG first or Remake first, but they'll probably tell them to start at the OG. Even if you want to hop right into Final Fantasy VII Remake and have that be your first FF7 experience, most people will still tell you, you kind of need to at least watch a summary of the OG first. In terms of being accommodating for new players, I do think that Final Fantasy VII Remake does get there a lot, but maybe not as much as it would have if it was truly focused on being accommodating for new players in that sense, rather than being a sequel to 25 plus years of compilation material. And part of the reason that that is a contentious statement is because I'm just flat out saying that it's a sequel. And a lot of people still believe that this is a remake of sorts. However, I think that if you're pulling from the original story and showing the flashbacks, even if it's not literally a sequel, it is thematically still a continuation of Final Fantasy VII. So I think that, no matter which way you look at it, whether it's, spiritually and thematically a continuation of the story events of FF7, or whether it's literally Sephiroth has time traveled to the past from Advent Children or Dirge of Cerberus or whatever point in time, I think no matter which way you look at it, that is still a sequel. It's just what kind of sequel that we're talking about. But perhaps even greater than that, maybe the label of sequel or remake isn't even relevant here. Maybe it's kind of short-sighted to even, really hyper-focus on that. It's really clear that they're trying to do something different here, and it's really ambitious and cool. And whether or not it will pay off, or whether or not that I enjoy it to the fullest extent as I enjoyed the original story, whether it has that impact, I don't know. I can say that I do have a deep appreciation of this not just being a nostalgia hash that it could have been, but that it's genuinely attempting something new. And in a world where we have so many remakes and remasters that are here to just grab as much nostalgia dollars as possible, I do admire the ambition to create something that is actually provocative and tries to challenge what the word remake means. That being said, I'm still on the fence, and I'm still hoping that it will actually be something that doesn't just try to challenge those things, but something that actually does and succeeds and improves and builds upon the original in ways we couldn't even imagine. But those are just my thoughts. Please let me know yours in the comments below, and I'll see you all in the next video.